Hi, good morning and a warm welcome. Rose Jacobs for 𝐊𝐚𝐥𝐤𝐧𝐞 TV, reporting to you live from Sydney, and you're watching the Global Markets Roundup. Let's dive into some key highlights and happenings from Friday, starting with the US market. Wall Street stocks soared while US Treasury yields fell on Friday after Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell indicated the US Central Bank could begin scaling back its bond buying program by year-end, but did not give a firm timeline. The MSCI World Equity Index, which tracks shares in 50 countries, rose 0.72%. The S&P 500 and tech-heavy Nasdaq closed the trading week at all-time highs on Friday, August 27th, after Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell cautioned against overreaction to inflation, reiterating that the bank would start tapering monetary support later this year. The S&P 500 was up 0.88%, the Dow Jones rose 0.69%. The Nasdaq Composite gained 1.23%, and the small cap Russell 2000 was up 2.85%. Powell downplayed inflation at Federal's Jackson Hole Symposium on Friday, stating there was no need for overreaction, but the bank would consider withdrawing support by the year end. Currently, the bank injects US $120 billion every month into the economy through its bond buying program. Markets were anticipating a clear timeline on stimulus exit and decisions on interest rates. On Friday, new economic data released by the Commerce Department showed consumer spending rose marginally by 0.3% in July after increasing 1.1% in the prior month, indicating the economic recovery may be losing momentum. Consumer spending is a major component of US GDP. Economists believe the rising Delta cases might have slowed down the recovery. Energy, basic materials and technology stocks were the biggest gainers on S&P 500 Friday. None of the 11 index segments stayed in the green. Utilities and healthcare stocks traded flat. Stocks of Manchester United soared 6.74%. Footballer Cristiano Ronaldo's plans to rejoin the iconic club gained momentum after Manchester brokered a deal with Juventus Football Club for his transfer. Moving to the bond market, the 30-year Treasury bond yields were down 0.97%, while the 10-year bond yields fell 2.50%. US dollar futures index decreased by 0.41%. Moving on to the European stocks, which rose on Friday after Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell showed no signs the US Central Bank will reduce a massive stimulus program, while real estate stocks were led higher by Norwegian real estate firm Entra after a major peer took a stake in the firm. The Pan-European Stocks 600 index closed 0.4% higher, with mining stocks up 1.9%, while real estate stocks added 1.5%. The London markets traded in a green zone, with FTSE 100 witnessing an increase driven by the heavyweight mining and energy stocks, which surged to a solid growth in commodity price. Subprime lender Amigo Holdings shares went up by about 3.80% after the company had reported decent growth in first quarter profit. Moreover, the company highlighted some material uncertainty to continue as an ongoing concern. FTSE 100 listed online food ordering and home delivery company Just Eat takeaway shares plunged by around 6.4% after the New York City Council approved legislation regarding putting a cap on the commission that the delivery app can charge restaurants. Aerospace and defence engineer Babcock International Group was upgraded by Barclays from equal weight to overweight. Moreover, the shares went up by around 0.21%. German bond yields hovered near one-month highs on Friday after falling briefly following comments by Federal Chair Jerome Powell, and marked their biggest weekly rise in at least 2 months. On Friday, Germany's 10-year yield, the benchmark for the euro area, was unchanged at minus 0.41%, just below Thursday's one-month high at 0.401%. And now it's time for a small break, but stay tuned. I'll be back with the Asia and Australian market updates.
Hi there, James Preston for 𝐊𝐿𝐴 TV. Are you into gaming and virtual reality? Does AI and the endless possibilities it entails capture your interest? Or are you constantly trawling through the web to try and discover the latest updates and innovations in the tech space? Well, let us do the work for you. From the latest product launches to shocking affairs on the World Wide Web, exclusive interviews and information about the top companies like Apple and Google to brand new tech startups vying for your attention. 𝐊𝐴's Tech Beat has the latest in what matters in the world of technology. Join me every single Thursday on the Tech Beat, exclusive to 𝐊𝐴 TV.
Welcome back. I'm Rose Jacobs and you're watching the Global Markets Roundup show. And we'll be back with you in just a moment after another very quick short break with some of our more local market updates.
Tune in to stay updated while on the move.
We will tell you where the crypto craze has reached,
Where the property market is headed next.
what the world is doing to become more environmentally friendly.
Apart from tracking the daily market charter.
Be on top of the latest news and announcements
With 𝐊𝐴 TV.
Welcome back again. I'm Rose Jacobs and you're watching the Global Markets Roundup show. Japan's Nikkei index slid on Friday in line with Wall Street's declines overnight, following caution around the prospects for an earlier than expected tapering of the Federal Reserve stimulus. The Nikkei shed 0.36% to end the day and broader topics lost 0.34%. China shares rose on Friday after investors took comfort in the central bank's biggest weekly cash injection into the banking system since February, and as authorities urged more financial support for retail and trading firms. The blue chip CSI 300 index rose 0.5%, while the Shanghai Composite Index gained 0.6%. South Korean shares closed slightly higher on Friday as investors refrained from making big US bets ahead of the US Federal Reserve's Jackson Hole Symposium later in the day. The KOSPI ended up 0.17%, rebounding from a 0.58% decline on Thursday. The index gained 2.40% on a weekly basis, its best since early February. And now finally, let's take a look at the share market closer to home. Friday, the benchmark index fell marginally to 7,488.3 points. Fortescue and Altium, are among firms that would release this full year earnings on Monday. Oil prices increased more than 2% as energy companies began shutting production in the US Gulf of Mexico ahead of a major hurricane expected to hit early next week. Stocks of major energy companies such as Santos and Woodside Petroleum could trade higher on Monday. Gold gained more than 1% and spot gold was up 1.44%. Moreover, US gold futures rose 1.47%. Leading gold mining stocks including Northern Star Resources and Newcrest Mining could trade higher on Monday. Well, that's all for now. Keep watching 𝐊𝐴 TV for more trending market updates. I'm Rose Jacobs.